I didn't plan to say it. If I'm honest, I didn't even realize the words were forming until they were already halfway out of my mouth. 1 second, I was standing there pretending to scroll through my phone. The next, I was looking at her, and everything else faded. It was late afternoon, the kind where the sun feels heavy and tired, stretching long shadows across the living room. The ceiling fan hummed softly overhead. My mom had been rushing around since morning, nervous in a way she only ever got when she was coming. Her best friend, Aunt Sarah, she'd been coming over for as long as I could remember. Birthdays, weddings, random weekends. She was always there, laughing with my mom, sipping tea, telling stories from their college days like time had never touched them. To me, she was familiar. Safe. Almost invisible in the way people become when they've been part of your life forever. Almost. The door opened, and she stepped inside with a small sigh, dragging her suitcase behind her. The heat outside had left a faint flush on her cheeks. A few loose strands of hair clung to her neck. She wore a simple blue kurta, nothing dramatic, nothing meant to draw attention. But something about her felt different this time. Maybe it was the way she carried herself, quieter, more contained. Or maybe it was the faint tiredness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. The kind that comes from years, not days. She smiled when she saw me. "There you are," she said warmly. "You've grown again, haven't you?" I laughed awkwardly. "I don't think that works anymore." She set her bag down and looked around the room like she always did, as if confirming that everything was still where it belonged. Like she was grounding herself. My mom disappeared into the kitchen to answer a call, leaving us alone. Just us. It shouldn't have felt strange, but it did. "So," she said, folding her hands loosely in front of her, "how have you been?" "Fine," I replied. Too quickly. "Busy. Work stuff." She nodded, like she understood more than I'd said. She always had that way, listening past the words. "And your mom?" she asked gently. "She worries too much," I said. "About everything." Her lips curved into a knowing smile. "That hasn't changed." There was a pause. A small one. The kind that usually passes unnoticed. But this one lingered. I noticed the faint lines at the corners of her eyes. Not flaws, proof of laughter. Of life. I noticed the calm confidence in the way she stood, the softness that didn't ask for permission. And suddenly, a thought crossed my mind, unexpected and uninvited. She's beautiful. Not was. Not used to be. Is. The thought startled me. I tried to shake it off, tried to remind myself who she was. My mom's friend. Someone older. Someone off limits in every way that mattered. But the thought stayed. And then the words slipped free. "You look beautiful." The moment stretched. The fan kept humming. Somewhere outside, a car passed. She froze. Not dramatically, just enough that I noticed. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine, and for a heartbeat, I saw something raw cross her face. Surprise, yes, but also something deeper. Something vulnerable. I felt my stomach drop. Idiot. I rushed to fix it. Sorry. That came out weird. She didn't interrupt me. She didn't laugh it off. She didn't brush it aside the way adults usually do when someone younger says something awkward. Instead, she studied me. Really looked at me. Her head tilted slightly, like she was reassessing a painting she'd seen 1,000 times and just noticed a new detail. "Thank you," she said softly. 2 words. Calm. Measured. But the way she said them made my chest tighten. I nodded, suddenly unsure where to put my hands, my eyes, my thoughts. "Yeah, just being honest." Another pause. This one heavier. "You know," she said slowly, "people don't say that to me anymore." I frowned before I could stop myself. Why wouldn't they? She gave a small, humorless smile. "Because at a certain age, you stop being noticed. You become background. Familiar. Safe." Her gaze drifted toward the window, unfocused. "Men my age see history. Younger men see boundaries. Women see comparison." She looked back at me. "You didn't see any of that." My heart began to race. "I didn't mean anything by it," I said quickly. "I know," she replied. That was the problem. She took a step closer, not close enough to cross a line, but close enough that the air between us felt charged. I caught a hint of her perfume, soft, understated, comforting. "Most compliments come with expectations," she said quietly. "Or nostalgia. Or pity." Her eyes softened. Yours didn't. I swallowed hard. I'm sorry if it made you uncomfortable. She shook her head, slowly. No, she said. It reminded me. Of what? Her lips parted, then closed again. She hesitated, just for a second. That I'm still a woman, she said. Not just someone's friend. Or someone's past. The words settled into me like weight. I didn't know how to respond. Every sentence I tried to form felt wrong, too big, too dangerous. She noticed my discomfort and exhaled gently, as if easing the tension herself. Don't worry, she said with a faint smile. You didn't do anything wrong. She straightened, stepping back into familiar space, reclaiming the distance. But, she added, her voice firmer now, you should be careful with honesty like that. It can touch places people keep guarded. I nodded, my throat tight. I understand. She looked at me one last time, longer than necessary. Just remember, she said, quietly enough that it felt like a secret, words spoken sincerely have power. Even when they're simple. Footsteps echoed down the hall. My mom was coming back. In an instant, the moment folded in on itself. Aunt Sarah picked up her suitcase, her familiar smile returning like a practiced mask. Looks like I made it just in time, she said brightly as my mom re-entered the room. The air shifted back to normal. But I knew something had changed. And I had no idea what it meant yet. Nothing happened after that. At least, nothing that anyone else could see. Dinner was loud and familiar. Plates clinked. My mom laughed too hard at old stories. Aunt Sarah chimed in at all the right moments, her voice light, practiced. If there had been a shift earlier, it was invisible now, tucked neatly beneath normalcy. But I felt it. Every time she passed the salt, every time she asked me a question directly instead of through my mom, there was an awareness I couldn't shake. Not attraction in the obvious sense. Something subtler, heavier. As if we both knew we'd stepped briefly into a space that didn't belong to either of us, and stepped back out just in time. After dinner, my mom insisted on showing her photos from a recent family event. They moved to the couch, heads bent together, laughing softly. I stayed standing for a moment, unsure where to put myself. Then Aunt Sarah looked up. Can you help me with my bag? She asked casually. I left something in the guest room. My mom waved her off without looking. Of course he can. I followed her down the hallway, my heartbeat loud in my ears. The house felt different at night, quieter, more intimate. The guest room light was already on. She set her suitcase on the bed and began unzipping it, her back to me. You didn't have to come, she said gently. You asked, I replied. She nodded, then paused. Her shoulders rose and fell with a slow breath. I want to be clear, she said, still not turning around. About earlier. My stomach tightened. I meant what I said, I told her. Quickly. But I didn't mean to. She turned then, meeting my eyes. I know, she said. And I'm glad you did. The words landed softly, but firmly. Why? I asked, before I could stop myself. She considered the question. Because life has a way of shrinking you, she said. Quietly. Slowly. Until one day you realize no one sees you anymore, not really. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded neatly in her lap. And then someone does. Without trying to take anything. Without wanting anything. Her gaze lifted to mine. That matters. I leaned against the doorframe, grounding myself. I didn't expect it to feel so big. She smiled faintly. Honesty often does. A silence settled, comfortable, but waited. Then she straightened, the moment shifting. But, she added, her tone calm but resolute, it stays right here. As a moment. Not a possibility. I nodded immediately. Of course. I'm serious, she said gently. Some connections are meant to be acknowledged, not acted on. I understand, I said, and meant it. She searched my face for a second longer, then nodded once, satisfied. Good, she said. Then we're clear. The rest of the night passed quietly. She went to bed early, claiming travel fatigue. I stayed up longer than usual, lying awake and staring at the ceiling. I wasn't replaying her words anymore. I was replaying the way she'd looked at me, not with desire, but with recognition. It unsettled me more than anything else could have. Over the next few days, something subtle changed. Not between us, but in me. I noticed things differently. The way people spoke when they felt invisible. The way compliments were often thrown carelessly, or withheld entirely. I found myself choosing words more carefully, weighing their impact. Aunt Sarah stayed for the week. We talked more than we ever had before, about books, about work, about how strange it feels to watch your life split into before and after moments you never saw coming. But we never crossed the line. We never revisited the compliment. And yet, sometimes, when the house was quiet and we passed each other in the hallway, there would be a shared glance, a silent acknowledgement of something understood and left untouched. One evening, as she packed to leave, she handed me a small notebook. "I don't need this anymore," she said. "But you might." "What is it?" I asked. "Thoughts," she replied with a smile. "Things I never said out loud." I didn't open it until after she left. Inside were reflections, short lines, unfinished ideas, moments of doubt and hope. Nothing dramatic, nothing confessional, just a woman reminding herself she still existed. Weeks passed, life moved on, but the moment stayed with me, not as longing, but as clarity. I realized then that growing up isn't always about wanting more. Sometimes, it's about learning when not to take something, even when it's offered quietly, without intention. Months later, I ran into her at a family gathering. She looked the same, but lighter. More at ease. When she hugged me goodbye, she whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." I smiled. Anytime. And I meant that too. Because some moments aren't meant to lead anywhere. They're meant to remind us who we are, before we forget.